Okay, hi everybody. We should be broadcasting live. I hope everything is working well for you. I saw somebody comment on volume. We have checked on everything at our end, so try raising your volume, and hopefully none of you will have streaming issues. We will do our best, and there will be a replay available from this broadcast too. So, firstly, thank you for signing up and choosing to be here. I have to be honest, yesterday, as I was thinking about doing this with you all today, I felt a little intimidation um, because I think there's so many things going on right now that are very unknown, very new, and everybody's business is different. But I reminded myself that there was a call to offer this broadcast to you guys, and I will offer you what I can, and you will take what works and you will ignore what doesn't. And really, in a way, the reason I wanted to share that with you is I think this is so often the creator's journey. One of the things that we have to overcome is the idea of what we can't offer people, or what we're trying to do that might not be good enough versus what we would like it to be. And I'm a massive advocate for just do it. There will be fear, there will be discomfort. That is part of the process. You can't avoid those things, and if you stay away from those things and don't create or do the thing that you feel compelled to do in the world, you're going to have a really miserable life. Trust me, I've been there. I know what that's like. But I have also learned that the mythic idea that I had many years ago, when I would see people doing their work in the world, things very different to what I do, but also people who I would see doing what I do, I had a very interesting idea about what their lives were like and about what their process was like. I used to always assume that if someone looked like they had it all together, then that was what their inner world was like. And actually, the truth is, we're human and we're in this soup of humanity. And even those of you who are very spiritually minded, spiritually focused, and spiritually experienced, I think at the moment we're in this very interesting climate energetically. The fear has never been as high on the planet in many ways, but so too is the awakening energy very high. So it creates this storm of energy and events, and so it's a lot to process. So there were a couple of reasons that this broadcast happened. Number one, I had a lot of friends, some I know very well, some not so well, go into a kind of paralysis around their work when all of this happened, and feel like they didn't quite know what to do now, and feel like they didn't quite know, well, are people still going to want this thing? Or how do I possibly put this out into the world at a time like this? And equally, if their work had dried up, if what they were previously providing was no longer needed by people because of these quarantine conditions and because of all the changes, they were equally paralyzed as to what to do. So I had a lot of conversations and, offered some thoughts and help to certain friends around that time. And so that was a theme that I was seeing in my life. At the same time, me and my team were having to really quite quickly change what we were doing. Like everybody, as soon as the quarantine came in, we had live events that we needed to make decisions about. Postpone, do we cancel? What do we do? How do we serve our people? How do we keep the hotels happy? What are we on the hook for? I mean, all that kind of stuff, which I won't bore you with. But also we were going to put the Own Your Value course out in April, which is now going to be starting next week. But it just wasn't right. It didn't feel like what the world needed at that moment, or what we should be offering. So we had another course, which I had loosely thought about a long time ago, called Elevate, that we suddenly brought forward. So we had a lot to change and to make changes around. And it was interesting. It was Noah who suggested that we do a broadcast about helping people. So well done, Noah. Thank you for putting this out there. And what I'm going to do today is I'm going to offer you the 5 areas that I've really sat with over the last 24 hours or so. When I tune in on those of you who signed up for this, I'm like, what are the 5, what are the areas I can speak to? And I've got 5 headlines here, which I'm going to flesh out for you. We also had some great questions. So I'll take some questions as well. And we're going to go for an hour. So get comfy, get your favorite brew. And yeah, I hope you're able to concentrate if the kids are in the background or you're homeschooling or whatever. But we'll go through it one step at a time. But first of all, the one thing that I wanted to talk about is that one of the things that I've heard several times over the years, I think this comes up a lot for the healer community as well. Why should I do it? Why does the world need it? Am I allowed to do it? Do people really want it? How do I explain it? And I get it. You know, I've definitely had those moments myself, not for quite a few years, I have to be honest, but I went through them. And one thing that I have a good friend who she works helping people with their businesses. So she often helps people increase their businesses, specifically through helping them connect. So she helps the people in businesses develop a deeper connection in their customer experience so that their businesses grow and so that they can actually serve the people they want to serve. And it's a win-win for everybody. It's a long story, really. It's a short way of me explaining what it is she does. But she has always said this. She said that she has worked through many recessions in the world, and she has always said there is always work to be done. There are always services that people need, and there is money there. And I bring money up because I know money's been one of the issues. People are still willing to pay for things. Now, I don't know about you. I know for me, I've been paying for different things since quarantine. There are different things that I have placed a value on. There are still many of the same things I'm placing a value on and still sending my money towards as an energy exchange. But the reason I bring this up is I think that I heard a lot of people with this narrative of doom and gloom and, oh, it's all going to tank and I'm going to be screwed. And, you know, and I get it. And I think there is room to have those emotions and thoughts for a short window of time, and then to notice that those thoughts are running through you and to go, oh, where's that coming from? Why am I having a very fatalistic view of it all? Because a fatalistic view is only going to create the very narrow, dark path that you're seeing. The reason I bring this up is a lot of businesses, and I'll use the word business loosely because I know that many of you, you know, to me, business is an energy. So yes, my work, Lee Harris Energy, has a business wrapped around it, a structure, a legal structure, a financial structure. But I see the business as an energy, and the business includes all of you who engage with it. And to me, it doesn't matter whether you're paying for one of our services or offerings, or whether you're here receiving from us, because there's nothing that we do that doesn't have some money in it. So the free things that I produce, that we put out there, that me and my team, I pay for those things. Like there are sometimes vast amounts of dollars going behind those things. So even if you are somebody who's never paid anything to receive anything from me and my company, money is part of the energy exchange that I am using here to funnel out the front. And I'm only using what comes in. So I'm using what comes in from the people who choose to buy in our services. So for me, there are two things when you talk about money. You can be against the money system in general. You can be anti the money system. You can be mad about how unjust the world is when it comes to how the financial resources are shared. And I'm with you on a lot of those arguments. You know, we can have that philosophical conversation. But then there's what we do on an everyday level. And even in my times when I had like nothing, like really very little, like I remember £2 in the bank account when I was back in England, when I first started doing this work full time in 2006, I had a fridge with food in it. And I remember getting a PayPal sale for like £15 or £20 like the next day. And I was like, oh my God, that's £15, £20, which in US dollars is probably about $23, $24. It was a miracle. I was like, whoa, someone bought something. So I don't associate money in a negative way. I just see money as a currency, as part of the way that we exchange and that we value. And while we're in a money system, it's what we use. So first of all, you have to check your mindset around money and check that you're not applying that to yourself. Because I never begrudgingly give people money. No one ever hoodwinks me out of anything. Yeah, sometimes I buy things and I think, oh, I don't really need to buy those things because I keep buying these books and then I don't read them. So maybe I don't need to buy them. Or maybe I'm buying them to support the author and that feels okay. And I like how they feel in my house. Whenever you start thinking about yourself and money and your business and money, get really clear about what you feel about money, because any muddiness is going to gunk the whole thing up, I promise. So if money and charging is one of your issues right now, I would really look at that, because there are things I have happily paid for in the last 6 weeks. There are things I have happily donated money to support. So check your own experience around money flow. If a big issue for you right now is charging, or you've got a story of, oh, the economy has tanked, because businesses like Zoom, people on Etsy, I was reading some stories about some Etsy stores that are booming because they're making beautiful masks for people. And they're saying, wow, I'm busier than I've ever been. So there are things that we still need in the world, and there are services that we still need, and money will be part of it. And there are things that we all need. Most of us, I pay rent, I pay bills, I pay a team of people. I'm not somebody who's extraordinarily wealthy and can just, donate all of this for free. I've met a couple of those people and it's really cool. But most of us are somewhere in the money system. So try and remember that money is not the enemy. The big thing I want to convey to you is that if you're giving value, if you're providing a service, and it's a service that people need and want, then there are going to be people who will be willing to use money as part of the energy exchange for that. Now, we will talk about free work later on, because that's really important too. And actually, it's very fulfilling and very nourishing, and is really important especially when you're starting out. So I have a good story about the free work for you later. But first of all, what I want to point out to you is we're really in a climate now that has really changed, and it's what we need versus what we don't need. So there are certain things we don't need anymore. We're physically restricted. Most of us are having to stay at home. So it's going to change the way that you offer your services. So just bear in mind that there is the shock and the recoil of what's going on, and that can happen 3 times a day if it needs to. But then there's going to be the part of you that's going to lean into what's going on and go, okay, how do I make some changes to my work, to my business, to what I'm doing in the world? I'm going to focus very much on those of you who have something right now tangibly in front of you that you can immediately make some changes in now over the next few months. There might be some of you who this whole, I'll use the term that's thrown around a lot, this COVID crisis. I actually think it's not really a coronavirus crisis. I think it's an earth and consciousness crisis in so many ways, but that's the word that is often that is out there. For many of you, this will be like a huge transformation. It will be the wake-up call around the relationship that you're in or the job that you've been doing. So for you guys, you might listen to this broadcast at a bit more of a distance. You might be hearing me say things and that's not really where you're at. You might be in the mega transformation phase. But for those of you who are in smaller degrees of transformation, we're going to go through a few things. The first thing I will say to you is what people are going to really want now more than ever is honesty and connection. And that's across the board. So if you're selling a service, selling a product, if your way of offering that to people isn't coming from an honest place and isn't acknowledging the connection between you, isn't acknowledging the connection that you have with your customer, or why your customer might feel connected to this product, it's going to get lost. And you're going to see as we go through the next few years, it's going to become more that way. Now, for most of you who are empaths, sensitives, we all tend to work on emotional resonance. So for years, we've probably been the people going, no, I don't like the way that they're presenting that. That doesn't feel right to me. And we, if you like, we choose emotionally. We come from that energetic connection place. But I think it's a really important, it's why you have to get over your shyness sometimes when you're doing your work. You have to be able to stand for your work. It was a process that took me many years, I have to say. You have to be able to stand for it so that you can actually connect with people. Otherwise, you're going to be a bit shy or hiding behind your thing. And that's going to make it hard for people to feel you or feel what it is that you're offering. So this is probably for many of you a time of busting out your comfort zone like never before. I mean, one example of that is Zoom, and all these Zooms and video calls that are going on. It's interesting to someone like me who's been using that technology, and so have my team. And, if you've been with me for years, we've been doing live broadcasts and all that kind of stuff for many years now, like over a decade. But it's interesting seeing how the rest of the world is getting more comfortable with being on camera, using the camera. I think it's really healthy. I'm not saying a lot of screen time is really healthy. I don't think our nervous system wants to live on a screen forever. But I do think it's healthy that people are being asked to kind of get over the shyness and just kind of go, here I am, this is me. Let's get used to it. This is what my hair looks like in the morning. Yeah, this is how messy my bedroom is. Did you want to see my roots? Yeah, I haven't, well, not my roots, but it's one of the things that a lot of my female friends are talking to me about a lot. And I've seen a lot of partners doing people's roots for the first time. Anyway, that's a whole other story. We'll go there someone else. So point number one is we have new circumstances. We have new circumstances. Now, I know that might sound, you might be like, yeah, Lee, I know I've been living it for 2 months, but we have to take this into account with our work in the world and with our business. We can't just carry on as normal and wonder why things aren't going quite the same way. So the new circumstances are economic loss and economic hardship and economic shock for, I think to some degree, for everyone. Some people are more shielded from it than others, but for some people it's really dramatic. So you have to acknowledge that and you have to take that into account with your thinking. We have physical restrictions that we're not used to. For many of us, there are either the loss of loved ones or there are health challenges with loved ones, people who are affected by the virus or other things that are going on. And especially with the separations that are occurring, that has more of a toll on the nervous system. So that leads me to heightened nervous systems. So emotional needs are higher. If you look at what's going on the planet, it has put a shock through everybody's nervous system, what's going on, the separations, not to mention the level of fear, panic going on around some of the stuff that's rising to the surface right now that's very triggering and very sometimes hard to swallow, hard to take. So world truths, system truths, certain darker things that are rising to the surface in the world. It's a lot to take in. So people's nervous systems are spiked. That's partly the new environment that we find ourselves in. And then also loss from the desire and the need to connect that people can't act on. So the reason I bring this up is for many of us, there is a need to connect. There is a desire to connect. There is a need to help regulate our nervous systems more. And I bring this up because I know a lot of you will be here because you follow my work, which means that a lot of you will already be working in fields where you are helping people to cope, to ground, to regulate their nervous systems. You might be in a therapeutic role, or that might be your role in your family. So why I bring that up is we have new circumstances. It sounds like I'm stating the obvious, but we have to now take those new circumstances and apply them to what we're doing and what we're offering to the world. So firstly, number 2, self-care for you. Acknowledge the stress. Acknowledge the stress. So whether you're a single business owner, whether you're working in a company, whether you're someone who owns a business and you have a team around you, you have to acknowledge the stress for yourself and for others. It's funny, I was just talking to Noah before this broadcast and he reminded me of something I'd forgotten. The first thing I said to my team when all this hit was, I just said, this is going to be weird. I said, this is going to be a weird time. And several of my team have young children at home who suddenly were now homeschooled. And all kinds of extraordinary circumstances have been going on with my team members, just like there will be for you and for all the people you know. So I just said, please don't assume it's business as normal. And if we have, one of my team members said, "Oh, I'm really sorry. I know we've got a meeting. I'm trying to calm the kids down." And I was like, "Don't worry. Don't calm the kids down. We're going to have a screaming child. It's okay." And he was just saying that even though he hasn't had to adapt much, even me just saying that to him helped. I'd forgotten, but I think it's important for us all to acknowledge the stress, because the stress creeps in. If you have a slightly hysterical friend, it might be good to say to them, "Honey, I think you seem really revved up. What can we do to help you?" She or he may not have worked out what's going on with their stress levels, but the stress is spiking. So we also have to apply that to ourselves. It's not business as normal. It's very different, and we're all figuring it out as we go. And the more we hold ourselves in grace and love around that, and anyone that we're directly working with, that it's all a bit all over the place right now, the easier it's going to be. The more we try and pretend everything's normal, the more we want to block it out, the more we want to make things how they were, the harder it's going to be. So point number 2 is self-care for you. You as the business, or the person who works for a business, but also anyone that you work with. Acknowledging that your self-care needs might be different right now. You might need 10 minutes alone sat in your car 3 times a day in order to cope. But also that the people around you are going to be in that mode too. It's really important because, in my case, if I'm not okay for 3 weeks and I'm not able to look after myself, or I'm physically challenged, it's going to directly affect not just my team, but the thousands of people that we serve. And that's okay. I mean, if that happened, that happens. But it has an impact on everybody, is what I'm trying to say. So self-care is not a luxury. It's something I've been teaching in my work for years. It's something I am a student of. When I say I've been teaching it, the Z's who I channel are the ones who have tried to instill that in me. And, I'm a slow learner, so I have to hear this stuff over and over again. But what I'm saying is just acknowledge the stress. And our work can be an escape from that stress. And that's wonderful. It can give us a purpose. It can give us a function. But we'll do really well with our transforming work right now if we also acknowledge the stress. Okay, so now we've got that out of the way. We've looked at what's the climate. We have new circumstances. That was number 1. We're acknowledging we have new circumstances. Number 2, self-care for you and for the people around you. The needs are going to be different. First 2 things. So, number 3, really key. People still need service and value. I've seen a lot of kind of entrepreneur teachers out there talking about service in, for me, a very buzzwordy way. There are certain people I've seen talk about it, and I don't really feel it when they say it. So it wouldn't have helped me. I wouldn't have understood that 12 years ago. I think some people are naturally service-oriented. For me, I was compelled to do the things I was doing. And when I saw as a byproduct it was serving people, I was thrilled. I was like, oh, that's great. Because, my mom taught me, be helpful to people, be useful, be kind. And I really value and honor that. And that's a family instilled thing. You have to be careful. You don't overdo it. You don't become a people pleaser. I had to look at that one too. I'm sure many of you did. But for me, it wasn't that my mind could ever have talked me into service. That's just not how I work. And I think probably many of you are the same. Because if your mind tries to talk you into service, you're going to do a lot of weird stuff that isn't very aligned with you. But if you do what you feel compelled to do, if you do what you know how to do, that's innate to you, and sometimes that involves getting comfortable with that innate skill, learning how to do a webinar, learning how to set up an online course, thinking, oh my God, how can I do an online course? I've never done one. Well, everybody who's done an online course, myself included, we all started somewhere. So people still need service and value. So providing these is magnetic energetically, and it will build self-esteem. I'm going to give you an example. I have a very good friend, a wonderful, very talented friend, brilliant motivational speaker, coach, done a lot of individual work over the years, coaching one-on-one, and also done a lot of work for other companies, but had never really developed her own platform online. And I'd been banging on at her for years, going, "You should do something online." And and she'd say to me sometimes, "Oh, I haven't been getting as many gigs, recently." And she's brilliant and she's magnetic. And it's interesting because this quarantine forced her to start offering free Zoom calls, doing exactly what she would do to corporate audiences of hundreds of people or one-on-one. But for the first time, she'd have 100 people online. She'd take them through a presentation for 40 minutes, which is all in her and innate to her. It has not only done so much for those people who have gone through these free Zoom calls with her, it has done a lot for her, because she was, wow, I can't believe this is working the way it is working. And now what she's beginning to see is she's going, oh, I'm going to turn this into a course. I'm going to still do some free Zoom calls, but I am, for the people who want to pay, I'm going to turn this into a more in-depth course and really take them on a journey with it. So she didn't do it for money. She did it because she wanted to provide service and value. It was good for her self-esteem. It was magnetic for those people. And what it led to is something else. So this is where your mind has to stay out of the equation when you're strategizing things. That's why service and value, I don't think, are very mental things. Sure, I can now stand back and analyze my own path and go, wow, those energy updates that I felt compelled to do, and I felt compelled to do my first one in 2012, and I couldn't believe it when 13,000 people watched it on YouTube. I had a little bit of a following online already, so now those energy updates are seen by, between the platforms, 400,000 to 500,000 people a month, which is crazy. It's, numbers like that you can't even get your head around. But what's interesting is that service that I have provided over the years has become more meaningful to me. There were times I wanted to stop doing them because I felt uncomfortable doing them, but I'm glad I didn't, because if you stay in it and you keep moving through it, that service that I do monthly is really what has led so many other people to all the other aspects of my work. They're really kind of the biggest leader for my work, but I didn't strategize it. I didn't sit there and go, oh, I've got this great idea that I'll get on camera and do these energetic, emotional weather forecasts once a month. And 8 years from now, they will be this big thing. No, if you'd have shown me that picture, if you'd have shown me that many people, I would have died. Any of you who've been with me for a while, I talk about fear. For me, it's always been about feeling my fear, but learning to move beyond it. So people still need service and value. And especially, I think, if you're in a bit of a crisis right now, if you're feeling stuck, if you're feeling like you're worried about money, or I would say to you, offer something for free to people that will give them meaning, that will also give you meaning, and that will connect you with people, because that's really what it's all about. I think that once we get beyond being able to pay our rent, there's two levels of success to me. There's like, wow, it's a success that I'm doing my own work and I'm paying my rent and my bills and I can look after my family. That's amazing. That's like, wow, I'm not stressing every month about how am I going to pay the bills? Have I got enough saved for tax? That's like the first level of success. It's like, wow, I made it to here. And then after that, anything that you have that's extra that allows you to build what you're doing, to employ other people and give them work, to create things or be generous in ways to others because there is some excess, that's another level of success. But really, all that success leads you to is connection. How many stories have we heard about people who are miserable in, a private jet or a mansion, or they have a Lamborghini? And I'm not dissing those things, because there are some people for whom a Lamborghini will be really important. But honestly, it's really that what we're looking to do is to connect. And right now, people need to connect more than ever before. So the very fact you're watching this, there will be something in you that is burning to offer yourself to the world. Be patient. There were many times I wished that things were bigger, quicker, for reasons like finance. So I didn't have to worry about the tax bill because I still hadn't learned how to manage the money of a business. It was all very new to me, and I didn't, had to learn a lot. But I also feel that for me and for you, this desire to connect, this desire to offer something to people, it will be burning in many of you right now, even if on the very same day it's burning in you, you wake up a bit depressed, or you read a story about the world that doesn't make you feel very good. There might be 20 minutes, 30 minutes, or 1 hour that day that you can summon some energy to do something. And I'm a big believer in put it on the calendar and announce it. That's one surefire way to get you to do it. Even this broadcast yesterday, as I start to prepare for it, my first 5 minutes is like, oh God, have I really got to do that? It's normal. And that's just me. I now have learned enough about my ebbs and flows. And the good thing is I've gone through that enough times that I don't let that stop me. And I've also learned that's why you schedule things. That's why you announce you're going to do something. I've many times announced I'm going to do something before I feel ready. And that's a really great way to hold your feet to the fire and to get something going. So what service and value could you offer to the world right now? Don't get attached to the numbers. If you have 8 people on a Facebook Live, that's 8 people. It's not like, oh, well, I'm not, Kim Kardashian's got however many hundreds of millions now. She's probably not a great example for our community, but I do think we get seduced by these big numbers on the internet. And the truth is, like even yesterday, Marty sent me this, Marty, who's worked with me for 9 years, she sent me and our social media manager, Nick and Noah, a text message saying, wow, look at this. Facebook had showed her that 9 years ago, we turned my personal Lee Harris page into a business page, and we had 3,000 likes. And it was like, wow, 3,000, we were like 3,000 likes. And then she said today it's like 100 and, I don't know, it's 170,000 something, somewhere in the 170,000s. So the thing is, we were thrilled that we had 1,000 people. So people are people. And if you're really struggling with that concept, think of 8 of your friends. And now imagine they're all just sitting, taking your yoga class online or reading an article that you've written. That's pretty cool. Those are 8 lives you're affecting. It may not immediately convert to financial revenue for you, but that will come. So it's really important to be patient and to be willing to build one thing at a time and put things out there into the world. So I'm curious, as you're listening to me, I'm like, what's the thing that you could do? If there was one thing you could do in the next week, is it write a blog post, make a video, agree to do a Zoom live call for a group of up to 12 people who want to have you hold space for something? Is it create that product that maybe in 2 years' time will sell? It's like, as a creative, are you doing a painting today that might be your best-selling print in 2 years when you have started selling your prints online? So it's really important to kind of stay in the trajectory of what's possible, but service and value. What gives people value? Because as they value something, you will build a rapport and a trust with them. But more importantly, it teaches you, it goes both ways. When I looked at how the energy updates were responded to, it was very interesting for me. And I would read the comments to understand who my people were that I was connecting with. And then I would notice so many of them were talking about people pleasing. So I was like, yeah, that's interesting. I need to do something on people pleasing. So give service and value and connect with people. And then a lot will follow after that. Okay. Number 4, adaptation and innovation. Adaptation and innovation. This is what I described to you about what me and my team had to do very quickly mid-March when all of this started to go down. It was like, oh, we need to adapt and we need to innovate. So we adapted what we were doing over the next 3-4 months, and we innovated. We created the Elevate course and decided that the Elevate course was going to be what we offered to our audience. We were going to make the price lower than normal, make the first one free. We also gave out a load of free stuff because you could feel people needed it. I did an extra energy update, and that was feeling based. I work very much from intuition and feeling, and then if the strategy required, the strategy goes around it afterwards. If you have to work out strategic things or how to architect this into the world. So where can you change to suit the current circumstances? So, for example, these mask providers on Etsy, instead of sitting there going, oh, no one's buying anything in my store, they were like, oh, well, I have a store, I serve people, there's this enormous need for masks. I'm creative, I'm going to make really cool creative masks for people. So there's a lot of that innovation and creative energy in the air. What you need to make these things happen is will and enough belief to make it happen. You need will to keep going, because any creator, and I'm sure many of you are creators, will tell you there are tough times when you're creating stuff. There's the day where you're like, oh God, goes through an ugly stage. It's not good. You're wrestling with it. You're like, why can't I make this bit work? And that's part of the process. But if you stay with it, if you have the will to persevere, you will have breakthroughs. Oftentimes those things will be better. I also wanted to just throw this at you. You can frame new things to people. So you don't have to completely throw everything you were doing away. You can introduce special new things. I have a friend whose membership was struggling with a membership group they were trying to set up, and it wasn't really working out the way they wanted to. And they were like, oh, this isn't really, I thought this was going to sustain me and my family. And it just clearly wasn't quite time. It wasn't quite the right time for enough members to be sustaining. And then Corona hit, and we had a few chats. And I basically said, well, you have this service that you were very popular for, which was your one-on-one sessions. And you've raised the prices of those because you wanted to do less of those. And you wanted people to go to the membership, and it didn't work. So now, can you, if you don't mind holding space for people, and brilliant, the one-on-one sessions, really good at it, really it's a passion. I said, and you're feeling a bit lost right now, why don't you halve the price of your sessions as a special, because of just acknowledging these extraordinary circumstances, and more people need space holding. So she did a really good deal on sessions. Sessions started coming in again. She started to feel like she was serving. There was also some money coming in to help her and her family. So she was able to adapt and innovate, but she framed it as something new and something different. It wasn't that she threw away everything she was doing and just said, now we're doing it this way. She said, in light of these circumstances, I'm offering this at this price for a limited time. So you frame it for people. You frame the new thing, and you help them understand why things have changed, or what it is that you're offering that's new that they may not have seen before, and why you choose to do it. Again, that's honesty and connection. You're telling people the behind the scenes, so they feel some trust around whether or not it's right for them. I always say, people, don't worry about rejection. People reject us all the time. Think about yourself. I'll use this example. When you go to the Amazon website, those of you that shop at Amazon, you don't tend to spend a lot of time looking at the thing that you don't want, going, well, I'll just give it a bit more time. I know I'm not going to buy it, but I feel bad for it sitting there by itself with only 4 reviews. I'll leave a comment. Or we just don't. We're quite mercenary when we're selecting what we need. We're like, no, don't want that one. Yeah, want this one. People will deselect you all the time. You won't even know about it. But there will be enough people that you will be right for that will select you. You have to just offer them and present to them what it is that you can offer. So think about where you could adapt what you're doing right now to suit this time, and think about what you could innovate. So a lot of people, you've seen this, a lot of people who are yoga teachers have suddenly been doing online classes. Sure, they miss being in the room with people, but they have managed to innovate and find a different way to still do their work, to still serve the people who want it, and perhaps to make some income to kind of help move that through too. So adaptation and innovation. What could you adapt in your business right now? And what might this time cause you to innovate? What might you create that's new? What could you try to offer to people on a business level? Okay. Number 5, the final one, mindset approach. Right now, think short-term versus long-term. So move your short-term plans to the front. Try and think of what you're doing in the world as the next 3 to 9 months. I say that this to me is coming from my energy intuitive brain. You know, when I was tapping in this morning, it will really help you focus, because I've met some people who are in real grief about what they were doing and they can't let go of that grief. And it's really important to grieve, but it's also really important to go, well, it hasn't gone away. I don't have to abandon that thing that I wanted to launch in December. I might just need to move it 6 months to next summer. And in the meantime, what am I going to do with my creative energy, with my service energy for this next 3 to 9 months? And the reason I bring that up is that's the kind of trajectory I'm told we're looking at energetically. You know, this next 3 to 9 months is going to be so where would that put us? If today is May, 3 to 9 months. So June, July, August. Okay. So we're looking kind of, the August through February window might be where we are still having to be operating slightly differently, behaving differently. I'm not saying quarantine lasts till next February, but we're definitely in these uneasy territories. So in order to help organize your mind and organize your mindset as a business owner, as a person offering their services to the world, try and just focus on the next 3 to 9 months. You can put all the other stuff aside. It can all sit there. It can all be on a file. But ask yourself, if I had to start from scratch now in this next 3 to 9 months, what could I do that's a little bit different? Sometimes even me asking you to consider that will make you emotional, pissed off, annoyed at me. Oh, but there's so much going on. And I get it. And that's where we talked about self-care. It's like your stress needs a bit more time. It needs a bit more attention. But even if it's just 5-10 minutes a day, and I've been in those days where it's not good, I remember in 2015, 2016, I was really questioning if I wanted to carry on with this work. Ironically, because I went through that year of big questioning, serious questioning, I came out the other side more committed than ever, and my experience of the work and the work in the outer world went to the next level. But on those days where I was feeling guilty or bad about not being able to do it, not wanting to do it, not wondering where my drive had gone, wondering where my connected energy had gone to the work I'd done for 10 years, more than 10 years at the time. I found that on the days I could just jot some ideas down for 5 minutes, it helped. And if that 5 minutes was all I was capable of. So when I say to you, jot down some short-term plans, do it for fun, do it as an exercise. Even if you do it and at the bottom, like, F you, Lee, it's fine. Don't worry. It won't hurt me. I've developed a good energetic muscle for that kind of stuff. But just try it, because you will be surprised how much creational new energy is there, especially those of you who think there isn't any, especially those of you who've been in grief or heaviness. Part of the problem for you is that there won't be enough new coming in. Grief is really tough when all we experience in grief is old. When grief is allowed to breathe and you have a really bad 4 hours and then it lifts, and that's actually the more natural way of grief. When we're really in heavy grief, it means we're clearing out a lot from the past. And it means we're clearing out, going through a big dark night of the soul. And of course, that's happening on a planetary level right now, but there's also a lot of new, light, high vibrational energy. All it needs is for us to give it some focus. All it needs is for us to be willing to look up, to maybe sit with a pen and paper and let something come down. So you'll be surprised. It goes back to what I was saying about adaptation and innovation. Think short term. What might you do that's a little different in the next 3 to 6 months? Don't make money the be all and end all. Sure, spend most of the hours of your day thinking about how you can make money if that's an emergency for you right now, but make sure there's some dreaming and make sure there's some creational energy coming in there, and make sure that you're also recognizing that even if you're focusing on making money 12 hours a day because it's an emergency, make sure that 1 hour a day you're focusing on connecting, creating, because those two energies are superpowers where abundance is concerned. So is gratitude, being grateful for what you do have. Trust me, there are days when you're in that, pit of despair that I don't want to be grateful. I get it. But if you can just do a few, I'm grateful that I'm alive today. I'm grateful there's food in my fridge, slightly resentfully. But actually it starts to change. You start to become more present to what is there rather than grieving the loss of what isn't. And it's really important to balance your energy right now. And it's work sometimes. It's a job sometimes, but only we can be the custodian of that job. So to recap our themes, we have new circumstances, number one. I know it sounds obvious, but we have to take that sentence and apply it to what we're doing. We have new circumstances, so we have to change. We have to change what we're doing in the world with our work and our business. Number two, self-care for you and those that you work with. Also acknowledging that other people might be doing a lousy job of self-care right now, so they come in all stressed. And you might say, I'm really sorry you're upset, but I can I help you? But I can't just be on the receiving end of this angry conversation. You might need to have some boundaries around other people's self-care. Number three, people still need service and value. People want experiences that they value. None of us are going to sit there. There will have been people who have left this broadcast because I wasn't right for them. I can even see now, I think we've gone down by maybe 100 people from when we started. And that's because people will have deselected me. They'll have gone, oh, not quite right. Some of them might have just had to go, or they think I'm going to catch the replay. But some of them will have gone, oh no, this isn't quite what I was looking for. Or, oh, I don't like his style. It's okay. We'll get deselected all the time. But it's who selects us that is where we connect. And that's the richness for the other person and also for us, because we want to serve, we want to be of use or be of value. That's a rewarding energy exchange for us. So people still need service and value. So provide it for free, provide it inexpensively, or by all means, if you're someone working with financially well-to-do people, keep doing exactly what you were doing. It's all going to depend on your own opinions around money and around what's valuable to others. So by all means, offer free things, but offer them really, really boldly and really lovingly. It will make you feel good. It's like when you give a gift to someone, it's the best thing. Most of us prefer giving gifts than receiving them. Adaptation and innovation. What can you adapt in your existing business? What can you create for your existing business so that you can serve people in a different way, that you can add value in a different way? Remember, frame this thing as a new thing. This is a limited time while we're going through these extraordinary circumstances. And last but not least, mindset approach. Short-term versus long-term. Don't panic about what you can't do in 2021 or what you thought you were going to do in 2020. By all means, grieve it. But also go, okay, well, the circumstances have changed. What can I do differently in the next 3 to 6 to 9 months? Try and have that mindset. And it will help you stay focused on the purpose in the present rather than distracted by what's gone away. That went longer than I thought it was going to. So we may overrun by maybe 10 minutes today. But thank you all for staying. I'm just seeing a comment there. I just have to read that from Helen. I did a free artwork shop that has resulted in an artist introducing my husband to the most amazing job when he was out of work. I love it. That's the kind of stuff I'm talking about. There is still synchronicity and magic at work, but we won't see it if we're only thinking about what isn't there or we're only in grief. So thank you, everybody, for staying tuned for all of that. Let's take some questions. Hi, Noah.
Hey, Lee, that was great. Thank you. There were some really, really great questions that were submitted. So I'm just going to dive right in here. There was actually 2 that were very similar in nature. So I'm going to kind of combine them into one.
Great.
So it reads, as a tarot reader, is it viable to place readings on a donation-based scale due to readings not being an essential need, but more a luxury during this time? And then the second question that was similar was, if you offer a healing session or healing service by donation, does this make your service less valuable?
I love it. You know, I was donation based for probably the first 2 years between 2004 and 2006. But what I did do was I set a bottom limit at a certain point. At the beginning, you know, it was, I think you could pay anything from £10, which was $15 an hour, because I worked out it was taking me 90 minutes per session. So I thought, well, the minimum I'd like to earn is, you know, what I would earn working in a bar, which was how I valued my skill at the time. But I also was an apprentice, so it was fine. You know, I was learning, and I was, I think what I would like you to reframe is the idea that a tarot reading is a luxury and not an essential, because to some people it's an essential. There are those of us who value our energetic well-being. Like for someone else, they might see the doctor as essential. They might be someone who's, you know, all about their physical well-being and their physical ailments. So they see the doctor and medical bills as essential. To sensitives, empaths, people who are highly wired, people who are trying to get themselves out of trauma, anything that helps with your well-being, with your connection, is essential. I mean, I was the person who would go to workshops on credit cards in my 20s because that's how much I valued them. And I just felt so strongly that it was worth me doing that. Whereas someone else would go, what the hell are you doing going to a healing workshop, you know? So I think it's important not to make assumptions about the customer. The customer will decide whether or not your price is right for them. But I absolutely think the donation basis is not only, it's something I encourage people to do when they're new to starting doing readings or healings of any kind, especially if they have money issues, especially if they're a bit like, oh, I can't charge for this. I'm like, great. What's the very minimum that your time is worth? Like if you're going to donate 90 minutes of your time to this healing session and 30 minutes setting up the room, that's 2 hours. What's the lowest you can earn? And they'll be like, well, I probably need to earn $25 for those 2 hours. That's the lowest. And I'll say, okay, so your minimum donation is $25. And it's funny because when I present that to them, often people will then go, well, that feels a bit low. And I'm like, good, we've found you're too low. And then we bump it to 35. And I'm like, how does that feel in your body? And like 35. That feels okay. What I like about that is it's not awful money for me to earn. And I like that I might be helping someone who can't afford it and that's what they can afford. And I'm like, great. Then you have your minimum. You can either have a $35 minimum, or you can say, I have a sliding scale of $35 to $85, depending on what you earn or what you want to pay. I frequently had people overpay me. And it's funny you bring this up because I have a good friend who's become a good friend, who's a really good tarot reader in England. And I always pay her almost double what she charges because I think she's worth more. And it's also, for me, it's like giving back to the very thing that built my life and work, you know? So to me, she's not a luxury. My seeing her a couple of times is me checking in with another good intuitive. And even though I can do it myself, I really like the support and the insight and the wisdom of someone else offering it to me. So you're not looking for people who think it's a luxury. You're looking for people for whom it's essential. The next step is what's the right price bracket for them and what's the right price bracket for me, because you can't price it for them and underprice yourself. You'll be resentful if you let someone have it for $10. Or maybe you won't. And maybe $10 for you is like, wow, $10 for me doing Reiki. That's incredible. And over time, you will build your mastery at what you do. You will start to see the value of what you do. And you may increase your prices. That was what happened to me. And as I started to do less one-on-ones, I used to take the money that I made from one-on-one sessions so I could first employ Marty and Anna so that I could start to build all of this work, which was where I needed and wanted to go. So I hope that helps. But no, I think it's great to do donation-based services, provided you're happy with it and they're happy with it. That's the thing that you'll experiment with. You can only figure that out by trying it and going, oh, that didn't feel right, or oh, that felt really good. So it will move and it will change your value as you go. So I hope that helps.
Thanks, Lee. The next question reads, What insights can you give me for starting an energy healing career? I'm an empath and extrasensory, but I'm scared to use these abilities because I used to be in a very bad spiritual group full of traumatized people. I want to use my power for a good intention.
Yeah, so you left that spiritual group with some of that group's trauma in your energy field, which is quite normal. And trauma is a big thing in the spiritual world. And I think the mindful among us tend to figure out that we have some trauma, and that might be why we're in the spiritual world. And those who are perhaps not connecting their trauma and their spiritual hunt, that can be tricky, because if a traumatized person is not integrating their spirituality and seeing that it's a pathway that they're walking towards to try and heal their trauma, but they're not healing their trauma, they're just playing it out in patterns and behaviors, then you have toxic relationships going. Nobody's fault, it's just part of the journey, but it sounds like you got entangled and it's left its imprint. It's like going through a bad relationship. It's like going through a bad relationship and an awful breakup. You don't tend to then go, oh, great, I can't wait to get on OkCupid and Tinder. You tend to be like, oh, I don't know about that. So there's some healing needs to happen for you, number one. And number two, I've met all kinds of spiritually inclined people over the years. And to me, a spiritual person is behavior oriented rather than belief oriented, meaning I've met many spiritual people whose behaviors are sometimes appalling. And I've met many totally atheist spiritual belief people whose behaviors are gorgeous and they are love in action, and they embody everything that you would hope a kind, loving, strong, present human being would embody. So make a choice. Heal the shadow of what you were left with, the imprint of the traumatized group. Let go of that. Keep letting go of that. And hold an intention that while trauma will be part of the experience in the spirituality you might work with, you set an intention for what kind of clients you want to work with. And I would say this to any of you who are healers. And this is normally something you learn on the job. I know this happened to me, and I've worked with many of the people I've mentored over the years. Some of them, it was to help them up level their experience of what they were doing. They had to recognize it was time to let go of only ever working with very wounded clients, and looking at their part and why they were always attracting the wounded, heavy clients, because there's always some alignment. So if they could figure out what they needed to learn, what they needed to heal, and hold an intention to open themselves to less wounded people as well, and to have an up-leveling experience for themselves and for these people, then they would shift not just their experience, but their work. So the beautiful thing about your question is you know what you want to set your mind on. So hold that as intention. Work on releasing the spiritual trauma from this group, which, by the way, doesn't have to be a full-time job. It's just something you might go and do a session on it with somebody and see how that goes. It's not going to stop you moving forward, but it's a bit like I said at the beginning, acknowledge the stress of these times. If you acknowledge that stress is there and that it might show up in some of your choices around your work, you'll stay mindful and you'll go, oh, I see why I said yes to this group who invited me to come and speak at this thing, because they kind of remind me of that traumatized group and I've clearly got a bit more healing to do. Well, then how can I show up differently this time? Can I stand up for myself with my words in the way that I didn't there? So sometimes we're learning on the job through the relationships and the work environments we create for ourselves, how to upshift and up level. And sometimes it's the best way to learn, even though we would love to wave a magic wand and have it have it all be unicorns and rainbows a lot quicker. So hold your intention and heal the past. Thank you.
Thanks, Lee. The next question reads, I feel a little exasperated by many people advertising their services online during this current pandemic. The internet is saturated, and at times, from the perspective of a customer, it seems the advertising creates an impression of desperation and in some cases greed. From my perspective as a professional business person, much as I see the value in a certain amount of advertising, I'm a great believer in letting one's work speak for itself and, in a sense, promote itself. Do you have any thoughts about how to balance staying true to oneself and trusting the flow of the universe and engaging with internet platforms, which is part of our everyday life in 2020?
Wow, that's not only is that a brilliant question, but I have so much. I mean, we could talk about this for an hour, so I'll try and be quick. And this has happened to me many times, by the way. This has been a great teacher for me around judgment, because there are many times I have seen the way certain people are advertising things, the way they are on camera, the language they're using, the fear-based tactics. I've had to work hard with some of them to feel compassion for the people, and also to let go of the kind of protective nature that kicks up in me when I see it. Now, I can only speak about really my field, because, you know, it's the field I'm in. I mean, I can see that going on in other industries, I guess, but it really has, especially in the past, it's really triggered me when I've seen manipulative or fear-based marketing happening out there. And what used to trigger me was, I would think, God, if a person was desperate, that person, all they've done is hooked them in their desperation. And that's really sad. And then, you know, I spoke to the Z's about it once, and they were like, yeah, but everybody finds who they need at the right time. So I think what you have to be careful of is excluding yourself from telling people about what you're doing in the world, because you don't like the way a lot of other people are doing it. If anything, it's more of a reason for you to go out there and do it authentically. I had a lot of resistance to advertising myself in certain ways. Even though I was willing to get on camera and do the energy update, it was really only about 3 years ago that I started using that last 5 minutes at the end of the energy update to share what it was I was doing in the world. Like, we have this new recording, or we have this live event. And my logic around that is, anybody who has seen an energy update before and doesn't want to know anything else, they're just there for the free information. At that point, they're going to switch off. It's cool. The others may see something that they're interested in, that they might value, but it took me years to get to the point where I was comfortable to do that. I have to say, when I was comfortable, when I got to the point when I was willing to do it, it did change things, because what I learned very clearly on a 2016 tour that we did, where we did a lot of dates across North America, it was a tour that sometimes was very successful and sometimes was very small, small number of people in the room, maybe 40 in one night and 180 on another night. And so, because we were doing this with an agency and they were taking a cut, it was important that I shared, we've got some books and CDs at the back of the room, but I felt shy to do it. I didn't want to take away from the people who'd come for the evening. But I'm telling you, it was such a lesson for me, because literally the night that I would take 2 minutes at the very end and just say, we have these books and I have these 2 CDs at the back of the room, and if any of you care to look at them, this one is about channeling and this one is about, and I really believed in the value of those products, and they were, they were like $10 each. They weren't expensive. But I'm telling you, the nights I told people about them, we would actually sell some CDs. And on the nights where you only had 40 people in a room, selling $60 worth or $70 worth of CDs was significant. It went towards the airfare to get to that place. So not only was it helping the business and what we were doing on a financial level, it was helping support what we were doing. I would also get emails from people going, oh, I got that CD at your event and I love it. So I think it's really important to be authentic to you and to share what you're doing in the world. But it is a muscle. It's not something that most of us are innately good at. I see it as being an ambassador between the customer, the potential customer, and the experience that they're going to have. And I would never stand there on camera and abuse either my company and my team or my customers by lying about something. So, I've got to feel that we've worked hard on it, that it's worth what we're offering it to people. And then I can just share it and say, hey, this is there if you like this other thing. But what I've found is that if you give people value and you give people free services or offerings that they engage with, then people decide for themselves. I know for myself, if some of my favorite music artists bring out an album, I'm buying it like that. It might not be their best album, but I'm buying it because I've got so much value from their last 5 albums. It's a no-brainer for me. I'm already connected. So it might be that if you're already offering service and value to the world in ways they can access, don't deny the people who are willing to pay some money for something by not telling them about it. But equally, if you feel like you aren't offering enough, you might feel more comfortable by offering some more free things or low price things. I think it's a journey, but I think it's a really important journey because for me, it helped get me over myself a little bit. You know what I mean? It helped me just get over it. It's like, oh, who cares? Whereas the me many years ago would have fought you like a dog and really had a lot of objections. And actually I was like, oh, okay, I'm just going to tell people there's this thing, and the people who want it will take it. And the people who don't will go, oh, I'm switching him off now. So I think it's also really being okay with rejection. But I agree with you. There's a lot of marketing out there that you want to roll your eyes. You're like, really? Can they not see their own ego all over this? And I also feel compassion for the people who are chasing those big numbers or those big lifestyles because they're trying to fill a hole inside themselves. I really hope they get those big numbers or those big successes they say they want, because that will be the moment when they realize that's not going to fill the hole. Then they'll work to find what really fulfills them. So I try and have compassion. Now I have much more compassion than I used to have when I just had a lot more judgment around what I would see. So I get it, but it's a really good question. Thank you. Noah, I think we have time for one more, if you guys don't mind us overrunning a bit longer.
Great. There's one more that I wanted to ask, so I'm glad you said that. It's a little bit of a long question, but I think it's a good one, so I think it's worth it. It reads, it seems success these days is so linked to having a big online following or access to a big online community through someone close to you or an influential plug. Often the language is about creating a movement, a community, or going viral. Much of the video/podcast content feels inspired by celebrity, and there's a fair bit of fake it till you make it. So I genuinely wonder, can a person that isn't popular in that way be successful anymore? I know my offering is potent and unique, and so does my small pool of clients and students. But it's a small number. I have a beautiful website and some socials, but I'm private, so I can't quite figure it out. Am I scared to be seen and self-sabotaging? The thought of being viral makes me feel sick. Is my judgment and frustration blocking the flow? Are my ideas of success grandiose? I know my work has a ripple effect. I love it and grow deeply from it. It just feels like more wants to be expressed, including knowing a life without money worry. That would offer some important childhood healing. Thank you.
Wow, that's great. Great question, and a lot of questions. And the thought of going viral made me feel sick. And when we first had like a video that did 250,000 views in 2012, I think it was, I was like, oh, like for quite a few days, So I don't think the thought of viral making you go, yeah, sure. I've met a few people in my life who are just wildly ambitious. And they're like, yes, I'm going to have millions of views. And I'm always like, wow, I'm always curious what it is that is driving that for them. And I'm sometimes admiring of the boldness that they have. Because I've met so many people for whom the opposite is true, is more of a fear. I think all of your questions need to be examined. I'd like to just remind you, you can create it however way you want it. I think sometimes we have this idea of lots of numbers means lots of money and success, and it really doesn't. I have been shocked at some of the people who I've worked with over the years, some of them actually who came to me for mentoring. And I remember one guy came to me and he had loads of followers online. And I like more than I did. And I remember thinking, oh, why is he coming to me? And what I realized was he wasn't actually making any money. And that was his big bugbear. He had spent so much energy and time building this following, but he didn't know how to turn it into a kind of a revenue model that could support what he was doing. And he was working all hours. And so I think how the outside picture looks is often different to what's really going on inside. So try and remember that. But I also remember a woman who had a very small following. And I remember my jaw dropped to the floor when I met her in about 2014. And she told me she was making something like $1 million a year from this mentoring club that she had. And she wasn't very well known, but she had this very high-end website. She had this ultimate belief in herself. She had all these people coming to her as coaches. So I think it's more to the point. Don't assume that your assumption about these people's success, or that that's how you become successful, is true. How do you want to create it? Do you want to have a quiet life? Do you want to not be viral? The other thing I would say to you is, I think a lot of the fear that happens for us around being on camera or having videos out there is some mythic belief that all of a sudden, you're going to be as known as Oprah Winfrey or some very big public figure that actually came through those old mainstream media systems that put people everywhere. It's very algorithm based, to the internet. Like I remember somebody, I don't know about you guys, but I have this a lot where, my nephews will tell me about somebody and I've never heard of them. They've got 60 million followers. And I'm like, wow, I don't know this person. So I think we're all kind of in our own little pockets. What I would do if I were you is I would investigate all those questions regularly, because those questions want to be answered in you. So I would sit with them and I would ask yourself, is this true? Does it feel true to my body that I'm afraid to go viral? And you might find another part of your body that goes, no, it's not really true. That's just a thought. That's just my fear trying to keep me small. I actually wouldn't mind going viral if and when it happens at the point that I have grown the energy to hold it. So I think there are many things for you to sit with and consider, but the one thing I would like to ask you to do is, how do you want to create it? Do you know where you're going next? Like, I have a vision plan for what I would like this company and what we do to look like in about 5-10 years. And I'm telling you, if I die tomorrow, I'm so happy with what happened. It's like, wow, what an amazing ride I had with the work that I did. I say that genuinely. If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. But today I'm in a place that's so much more comfortable and happy and grateful about my work than I've ever been able to be. But that has taken work. That didn't just happen to me. That wasn't just because, it's like it's been hard won as a self-growth journey, not just a figuring out how to get better at what we offer, how to run a business, all those things, that were learning curves. It's been a self-growth journey too. So this is really valuable information for you. These questions, what you write down in answer to them. I would sit and journal with these for weeks to come, but I would also write down your ideal vision plan for your business. My ideal vision plan is, I'm making plenty of extra money with which I will do X, Y, and Z. Not many people know me, but the people who do are really grateful. I get to do videos for just 400 people, and I keep those private. How do you want it to be? And the thing about it is, keep writing it over and over again. Don't write it and then just try and execute it for 2 years, because you'll keep changing and growing. So I think this is going to be really good for you, really valuable. So it's 1:15. So we've been going 75 minutes. So I think we should probably wrap up, given we said this was going to be an hour. But firstly, thank you, Noah, for holding this and for asking the questions.
Yeah, you got it. Happy to be here, Lee.
Thank you. And for those of you who are already signed up to do our Own Your Value course, can't wait for that to start. It starts next week. Noah, can I just ask you a quick question? Is the last day of registration June the 9th? Have I got that date right?
Yeah, that's correct.
Perfect. Thank you. So if you did want to join us for the Own Your Value course, June the 9th will be the last day that you can register for that course. And at that point, we close the doors, and whoever is in, and you have lifetime access to the materials. I see a really good question here from Aletta. Aletta has asked, is the Own Your Value course going to teach me hard skills, marketing or tech tools in starting a soul business? Or is it more about mindset and overcoming your fears, etc.? Is it enrichment or solid business building? I would say that probably Own Your Value is 60% mindset and energy focused and 40% skills. So there aren't things like how to light your YouTube video. Those kinds of things you can find online and for free and everything. It's more of a guided journey to be a container and a space for you to go to a new level around your value. So I would say who this course is not for, if you already feel pretty good around your self-worth and your value, and you're not really having struggles around pricing or valuing your work, and you kind of know what you're doing. You would like to expand things, but you're like, no, I've got 4 or 5 different ways I do my work, and I can think of a few more. Probably isn't for you, especially if you're a 6-figure business or above. But we have had people come into the Own Your Value course who were doing 6 figures and above, but they came for some other specifics. Like, one of the things I talk about when we've gone through the self-esteem piece and value and pricing is I break down a few different ways that you can offer your work and why those things might work. So things like, what is the value of a blog post and what might you want to think about? So it's much more a mindset training coming from my energy intuitive standpoint. I share personal stories. We have 5 bonus interviews with an intuitive reader, a marketing coach for small businesses, my brother actually, who worked a lot with me in the early years to help me kind of develop things. We have an artist, Jesse Reno. We have Chris Assad, who's a singer-songwriter and a facilitator, an energy facilitator. And we also, I think we have Nikki Pattinson, who's a fantastic motivational speaker. And really, she's all about showing people the value of things. So there are lots of different aspects to the course. And if you go to the course page, you'll be able to read it, and I trust you'll feel it. If it's for you, we'd love to have you. And if it's not for you, it's been great to see you today. And I wish you all the love and all the success in what you're doing in the world. And for me, success is, how purposeful do we feel? How connected to what we're doing do we feel? And are there at least a few things we can be grateful for each day? That to me is a pretty successful life. The rest is just circumstance, but I don't want to dismiss it either. The reason that I created Own Your Value is because there came a point in time for me when I'd been very successful as a one-on-one reader. You know, I had gone from, charging $15 an hour. There were only 2 times in 14 years that I didn't have somebody waiting for me. I didn't have a line of people. And by the end, I think by the very end, I wasn't doing one-on-one sessions anymore, but I was mentoring people. And I was charging $4,000 to mentor people, which would normally take place over 4 75 to 90-minute sessions, spaced 2 weeks apart, some email correspondence in between. So, if you look at it, we kind of, my rate got up to about $800 an hour as a one-on-one specialist after 15 years. Now, if you had asked me to sit with that amount way back at the beginning, would have blown my mind. Would have been very uncomfortable for me, and I would have had many objections. But by the time we got there, not only was my value in the world more expressed, it was also, for the people who were choosing to hire me, it was adding immediate value to their business. And equally, the money that we were charging for my mentoring was helping me fund the growth of a team, the growth of a group of creatives who could impact the world in free ways, and also to do things affordably for people. That was always important to me, that we would have very affordable offerings as well as free things. So that's really what Own Your Value came from. It came from not only my own big trajectory to having a 7-figure business after this 13, I think it was 13 years in, I got to 7 figures. And I had to figure out how to run a 7-figure business as well. It wasn't easy. But it also came from meeting so many healers, creatives, and artists. I came from the world of creatives, and I came from the world of healers. And the starving artist and the starving healer issue that I saw stop so many brilliant people doing their work in the world. And so I wanted to offer a way to give you a place to think about your value in a clean way and to find the right alignment for you, and then look at all the multiple ways that you can offer things to the world that you may not have even thought about. All I knew at the beginning was one-on-one sessions, and I couldn't see anything beyond that. But over the years, we've offered things in about 12 different formats now. So it really is designed, if you want to take your business to the next level, if you are beginning, just starting out and not sure how to get started, it's perfect for you. Or if you're wanting to move from part-time to full-time, it's not only a course that will hold you, but over the 2 months of the experience, we have a private Facebook group. You'll be doing it in community. So yeah, we hope to see you, and there will be several live Q&A calls with me throughout where we'll go into detail on different business challenges, different offering challenges. So I hope that explains it. And you can find out more at ownyourvalue.world, ownyourvalue.world, or just go to leeharrisenergy.com, hit the courses tab. You'll see it there at the top. And I'm sure you'll receive an email about the replay when Noah will give you links. So if you're coming to Own Your Value, we'll see you there. If not, lovely to be with you today. Lots of love, everyone. Take good care of yourself. Bye-bye.